rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
Black Democrats can thank Republican President Abraham Lincoln for Juneteenth. As a matter of fact, we shouldn't have Juneteenth as the national holiday. If there should be any day that we celebrate, it should be 1/1, and that is the day, the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation. Most blacks didn't even know what Juneteenth was until Biden made it a holiday, and all it does, or all it was intended to do, was to memorialize victimhood or perpetual victimhood in a black community so that elite white Democrats could feel superior. Also, blacks who were never slaves feel entitled, right, to special privileges under the law, extra rights, not equal rights. And lastly, all it does, Juneteenth, is give Democrats a cudgel to use against Republicans for political purposes. That's all Juneteenth is about. Welcome to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast, your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. Stay tuned for some quick program messaging, and we'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Please subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast: Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. Make sure you rate, review, and share the podcast on YouTube and Rumble so we can move up the charts. All things social media at the Carl Jackson Show, Instagram, Twitter, Getter, True Social. Where else? Well, you name it. Wherever we are on social media at the Carl Jackson Show is where you can go to find us. All right. Also, today's show is brought to you by MyPillow, MyPillow.com. Mike Lindell, a fabulous patriot, right? Fighting for election integrity, fighting for your freedom, also creating American jobs with American products or making American products. So go to mypillow.com right now. There's an offer that's exclusive to my listeners. You get the new MyPillow 2.0, buy one, get one free special. All you have to do is enter my name at the top of the page and the promo code Carl, C-A-R-L, or give them a call, 800-858-0263. It has the same patented adjustable feel as the original MyPillow, but now it's even softer, smoother, and cooler because it has this new temperature regulating thread. All of Mike's products, or MyPillow products, come with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. So go right now. Go to mypillow.com. Get your buy one, get one free offer, or take advantage of your buy one, get one free offer. Okay, guys, let me start here. Actually, I want to start with this video of Joe Biden and Senator John Fetterman. Apparently, there was a there was a rally, a union rally, if you will, that Joe Biden held to kind of kick off his reelection campaign. I don't believe that Joe Biden is going to be the nominee in 2024. I didn't think he would last this long. I thought he was going to go all the way up to 2024, and I admit, I've gone back and forth with this. I'm like, they're going to run them all the way to the end, and then they're going to switch places. And I'm starting to believe they're going to do that with Gavin Newsom, not Kamala Harris. I'll share you some stories of Kamala Harris in just a second, and perhaps you'll understand why. But who in their right mind, what American believes that putting these two men on display together is a good thing? The Democrat Party should absolutely be ashamed of themselves for voting for this man. Obviously, you have Joe Biden that is not completely there. There's no way that he's cognitively capable of being the president of the United States. And then you also have Senator John Fetterman. When you watch this video, you're going to understand what I mean. I'm sure those of you that listen to this podcast already understand what I mean, but watch this video anyway. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and our Rumble channel so you can watch the video in its entirety, as well as besides just hearing the video. So Gabe, let's go ahead and roll this video, and then I'm going to opine afterwards.
And now I'm standing next to the president again, next to a collapsed bridge here, and he is here to commit to work with the governor and the delegation to make sure that we get this fixed quick, fast as well too. This is a president that is committed to infrastructure, and then on top of that, the dual kind of law of the inflation bill that is going to make sure that there's going to be bridges all across like this, all across America getting rebuilt.
Oh my God! Seriously, I don't know what I don't know what delegation is, and I'm not saying that just to be mean or to mock him. This is sad. Or what did he say? Infuriation or inflation instead of inflation. Inflation, I believe, is what he said. That's the senator of Pennsylvania, John Fetterman. Those that voted for him, quite frankly, I think you're complicit in the abuse of a disabled person. I think his wife is. I think both Dr. Jill Biden, and Senator Fetterman's wife are despicable human beings. I think they're both guilty of abusing mentally disabled people, and they should be ashamed of themselves. I'm tired of people. I saw some lefties online on Twitter in particular talking about how anybody that, one guy in particular anyway, that said, anybody that disparages John Fetterman for the way he sounds and talks, there's an issue with us. No, there's an issue with you. Anyone with a heart and common sense and compassion knows that this guy shouldn't be anywhere near the Senate. There is no way this guy is calling delegation whatever he said and inflation, and you expect him to read and to comprehend bills, complicated bills that dictate what happens in the lives of 330 million American citizens. Those that support Joe Biden and John Fetterman, you're an absolute joke. And you're complicit in abuse. This is absolutely sad what we're seeing. These guys Joe Biden should be in the White House, and John Fetterman should not be in the Senate. And by the way, I'm so sick and tired. I know he's trying to play like he's the people's guy, John Fetterman, but this is a spoiled brat. This is a guy that grew up with money, his parents with money. He was given a house. He's basically been given his job. This is a guy that's been sitting on his butt for a long time. He tries to pretend like he's amongst the people wearing his little hoodie, right? That's how dumb he thinks you guys are. And look at his condition. But that's how dumb he thinks his voters are. It's a shame. And honestly, he should not be dressed like that in the Senate. If you're going to represent the United States, at least wear a freaking suit and a tie, for God's sakes. I'm so sick and tired of that. Okay, moving on. Now, this weekend, obviously, or today is Juneteenth, and some of us get to pay for federal employees that are taking the day off. We get to slave today, while federal employees get to take the day off and get paid for it. Man, that is absolutely fascinating. I want to show you some video. I want to show you another video real quick. Where did these crimes occur? Was this Illinois? Was it Chicago? Why did I even second guess myself? So this is what happened in Chicago. At least 20 people were shot, one fatally, at a Juneteenth celebration right outside of Chicago shortly after midnight. This, according to the DuPage County Sheriff's Office. So here's the video of that. This from Reuters. Let's go ahead and roll the tape, por favor, Gabe.
Eyewitness video shows the aftermath of a deadly shooting in Willowbrook, Illinois, just after midnight Sunday. Police vehicles surround a parking lot where at least 20 people were shot, one of them fatally, during a Juneteenth celebration that had gone into the early hours. Police say they are still investigating the motive and number of shooters involved. Here's Deputy Chief Eric Swanson from the DuPage County Sheriff's Office.
Shortly before 12:30 a.m. on Sunday, June 18th, DuPage County Sheriff's deputies were in the area of Honeysuckle Rose Lane and Route 83 and heard numerous gunshots fired and responded to an area where a large gathering of people was happening.
The group had gathered in the area 24 miles outside of Chicago to celebrate Juneteenth, the newest U.S. federal holiday that commemorates the emancipation of enslaved Black Americans. One local resident described the chaos following the shooting.
There were sirens coming from every direction. There was just hundreds of cop cars from all the way at the light at 91st, just down here. It was just a lot.
All right, so that was. I know this isn't what's gonna happen with all Juneteenth celebrations. There doesn't need to be a Juneteenth. And honestly, man, this is sad, but this is what's going to happen. It's just like having Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Have you ever noticed that, Gabe? Everywhere you go where there's a Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, there's violence on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. They always put it in the heart of the hood. I don't know why they do. Actually, I do know why they do it, but it's funny to me that happens, or ironic, I should say, that happens. But that's the truth. Listen, we don't need to celebrate Juneteenth. I'm going to give you the history of Juneteenth. I went over over my talking points here, and I just want to reiterate them. First off, Black Democrats need to be they can thank Abraham Lincoln, the Republican president. There would be no Juneteenth without it. Again, I say that if there's going to be any celebration, and I think we should totally wipe out Juneteenth, but if there's going to be any celebration, it should be the celebration of freedom. And that would be the signing or the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation, which was done on 1/1/1863. So what better way to break in the new year for the United States of America than to celebrate freedom? Just like we do on Independence Day. We have 2 days where we could celebrate that. But if we're going to celebrate it, we shouldn't celebrate victimhood. We should celebrate freedom. And then here's this. Most people didn't even know, most Black people, and I would dare say most Americans didn't even know what Juneteenth was. You remember when it was rumbling, people started talking about this. I think even during the Trump administration, not him, but I believe Democrats back then started talking about Juneteenth, if I recall correctly. And people were like, what the heck is Juneteenth? I mean, I have to look into it. I had read about it several years ago, to be frank, but I completely forgot about it. So I had to refamiliarize myself with it. But nobody knew what this was until Joe Biden decided to make it a national holiday. And then Black people were like, oh, yes. This is something, NAACP, all of these people that make money off of it, the big perms of the world. The Al Sharptons of the world, all the people that make money off of victimhood. Yes. We need a Juneteenth. All right. But most Black people didn't know what it was. All it does is memorializes victimhood in perpetuity. Right. That's all the left wants. They want to make sure that Blacks continue to feel like victims. And then the white Democrat elites come in and champion their cause, say, you guys are victims. You guys will always be victims. It's because of our past in the United States of America. And let us, these white, we white liberals in the Democrat Party, we want to be your saviors. And then you have Blacks who were never slaves that feel entitled to extra rights under the law, even reparations in some cases. And it's just sad. It's a travesty. Also, it gives Democrats exactly what they want. They want a talking point. They want an issue. If Republicans were to come in and say, you know what, we're doing away with Juneteenth, what do you think the narrative would be all across the news and amongst and in social media and everywhere else? It would be that Republicans are wiping out some Black holiday like they've always done, despite the fact that it was the Republicans a Republican who emancipated the slaves, fought on the Union side, and no, there never was a big switch. Newt Gingrich didn't take over the House until 1994. So that is a complete and utter lie. You had one Democrat senator that switched sides, and that was it out of 26 senators. So there never was a big switch. So the left is lying to you about that. But let's go over the history of this real quick. In June 1865, federal troops arrived in Galveston, Texas, and they went there to take control of the state and ensure that all slaves were freed. Because although the Emancipation was signed in 1863, obviously we didn't have social media, we didn't have television, or they didn't, right, to get the news out right away. Also, there were people that had fled different parts, or Confederate soldiers that had fled parts of the South, moved to other parts of the South where Union soldiers were in control of the state, but not necessarily the areas. But the troops arrived, came a full 2.5 years later after the signing of the proclamation. And then Juneteenth honors the end of slavery in the United States, and it is considered the longest running African-American holiday. I don't know what an African-American is. I really don't. I'm so tired of these hyphenated terms. This is from history.com. Black at the time, I take that back. At the time, that was a true statement because they were real Africans. So I'll hearken back to that point. All right. So at the time, those were real African Americans. But again, it was to celebrate the emancipation of slaves that had occurred 2 years earlier. That our beloved president, deceased president, or the late president, Abraham Lincoln, signed into law. Also, Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered. This took place in Galveston, Texas. All right. He surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse. That was 2 months earlier in Virginia. All right. But slavery had remained unaffected in Texas, and that was until the U.S. General U.S. he was a Union soldier, All right, a Confederate versus the Union. So U.S. General Gordon Granger stood on Texas soil. He read what was called the General Order Number 3, which read, quote, "The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the executive of the United States, all slaves are free," close quote. Now, the emancipation again was issued on January 1, 1863. If we're going to celebrate anything, we should celebrate that. But you know why the left doesn't want to celebrate that? Because consider this. The Emancipation Proclamation had actually established that all enslaved people in Confederate states, aka Democrat-run territory, that were in rebellion against the United States, quote, "shall be thenceforward and forever free," close quote. So this was a big deal. We think about history in terms of our lives today, which is completely the wrong way to do it. We don't think of history in the context of history. This was a huge deal. This was the federal government stepping into states' rights and saying, wait a minute, we are not going to allow this evil to exist in this country any longer. That was a huge freaking deal. And you can thank the Republican Party for it. Thank the Lord. The Emancipation Proclamation didn't free slaves instantaneously, as I've already mentioned, as again, it only applied to Confederate territory, right? And so, or Confederate states in the rebellion. So it's very interesting. So not all slaveholding border states or rebel areas that were already under Union control had submitted to this, but eventually they did. There weren't a lot of Union troops to enforce this edict, if you will, handed down by the president at the time, Abraham Lincoln. And there weren't a lot of big wars going on in those other territories outside of the South. And so nobody feared that they had to worry about ending slavery. But eventually it came to pass. It took a long time coming, but it did happen. All right. So slavery remained in Texas for a while, again, because there was no large scale fighting and not a lot of Union troops. And then the last couple of things, just so you have in history of this, after the war came to a close in 1865, again, that was when General Granger arose in Galveston. So that was in June, and that signaled the freedom for 250,000 slaves approximately that were in Texas at the time. So that's what it's about. This was an issue. This was like this was a regional holiday. All right. Juneteenth was, and it wasn't even called Juneteenth originally. Freedmen or former slaves in 1866 held festivals where they would barbecue, where they would pray, where they would sing music, have music, so on, all this kind of stuff. It was called Jubilee Day, and they would celebrate their freedom. So why is it that the left wants us to celebrate victimhood? Well, I've already told you why. They just want this as an issue. They want blacks to be perpetual victims for our entire lives so they can lord it over us and say, hey, we're your champions. We're your champions. We're your champions. We'll end racism in America. We'll end racism in America. But ironically, it seems like racism under the Biden administration and under the Obama administration grew worse inside of the United States. And actually, that's not seemingly, that's a fact. It did. All right. Now, I want to get to this story with Kamala Harris because I thought this was very fitting. Kamala Harris is a great example of stolen privilege or stolen black valor. Stolen African-American privilege, whatever you want to call it. She's a total fake. She's a total phony. She's a total fraud. But she also is a communist, in my opinion. All right. And so never misunderestimate if she were to become president of the United States. I think she would be just as evil as Joe Biden. Obviously, she doesn't have a great personality. That is very true. We all see that. She's not the smartest or not the brightest bulb in the bunch, but I think she has communist tendencies, and she displayed that in California. So that's what we need to worry about. But I felt like I needed to tie these two together because this is what this is what perpetual victimhood brings us. Perpetual victimhood gives us people like VP Kamala Harris that ascend to the vice presidency, and she has no business ascending to the vice presidency. So you guys may know this story, but VP Harris navigated her way through the cutthroat politics of San Francisco, right? By dating, she was 29 years old at the time. She dated Mayor Willie Brown. He was 60 years old at the time. He was married, although at the time he claims that he and his wife their relationship was estranged. But people said, listen, this guy, he was a player. He would go to parties. He would have his wife on one hand, girlfriend on the other. I don't know if that meant that the wife was in on it, or that the wife knew, or that the wife just assumed that, he was talking to a business partner. I don't know if that's completely literal, but that's the way the reports sounded. All right. So again, Kamala Harris dated at the age of 29 years old, dated 69-year-old Mayor Willie Brown. And basically she was a girlfriend, right? She was a floozy. This is why you hear the rumors that she slept her way to the top. Take it for what you will. All right. She's an immigrant daughter. When I talk about stolen black privilege, she's an immigrant daughter of privilege who took advantage of affirmative action programs. Did you guys know that? She took advantage of affirmative action programs. So not only did she sleep with people in order to work her way to the top, right? She took advantage of affirmative action programs when she wasn't a real black American. She was a privileged immigrant daughter. Her father has a, where is it? Good Lord. Her father was a Stanford economics professor from Jamaica. Stanford. That's an elite Ivy League school, guys. Or it was more elite back then. Right now, they're woke. So these schools are turning to crap. All right. Her mother was a privileged, what they call a Brahmin, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I hope I am, from India, which was a privileged class. And she had a PhD in cancer research. So this chick, Kamala Harris, isn't she isn't somebody, just like Barack Obama. They never really experienced what it was like to experience real racism. As a matter of fact, she comes from a family of slave owners. Kamala Harris does. In the territory, Jamaican territory, her family, her lineage, they own slaves. There was a program called the Legal Educational Opportunities Program that made law school available to disadvantaged students. And that's the program that Kamala Harris took advantage of to go to what's called UC Hastings, UCS, and University of California Hastings Law. Now, it is what's called a low ranked, so it means it's not great, and which explains a lot, frankly, but a low ranked law school. Especially if you're bringing people in simply because of the color of their skin or what's in between their legs. Again, former San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown had even admitted to giving Kamala Harris appointments that furthered her career. He also supported her success for running for the San Francisco DA back in 2003. So first, downtown Willie Brown, as he was known. And now you got to wonder what downtown, you know what I'm saying? All right. So anyway, Mayor Willie Brown, he appointed Harris to the Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board. At the time, that was back in, I believe, the late 90s or so. That paid her $97,000. In today's money, that is $170,000. All right. So he hooked her up with a position and a well-paying job. All right. And then later, I guess she complained about that to him. She wanted a different job. So she actually took a lower paying job, which paid her $72,000 at the time, $126,000 in today's money. But she didn't have to work. She showed up like once a month or something like that, some board meeting or something to the California Medical Assistance Commission. And so she was paid at the time $72,000 where she didn't have to work. He also bought her a BMW that she rode around with, a 1994 BMW at the time. So he hooked her up. This is a lady that experienced lots of privilege. And then she's also a lady who you may remember. She went on the Breakfast Club with Charlemagne. I hate saying this, but Charlemagne the God is the name he goes by. And she went on his show and, you know, bragged about listening to Tupac and smoking weed. I don't even believe her, to be honest. Her father even got mad at her. I don't believe her. I think she was just trying to cozy up to black people. And sadly, that's what she felt like she had to do. To cozy up to black people, she had to say, I smoked weed and I listened to Tupac. I mean, give me a break. This lady freaking racist, a little bigot, buying into stereotypes. It's sad. But her father was upset that she had done that. And anyway, she laughed about doing that. She joked about doing that. Yet she was a heavy-handed prosecutor when it came to marijuana lockups in the state of California, locking up over 2,000 people for marijuana offenses. You have the left going crazy about that. Remember, Tulsi Gabbard took her down big time when it comes to that issue. I'm trying to find. Here we go. She has no ancestral connection to American slaves. This is from, actually, the Revolver put it up, but there was I think this post originally came from Nairaland.com, but Revolver News put it up. This is actually an old article, but I just want to reiterate what affirmative action does. And I mean, it's destroying our country. We're letting people hold positions that they shouldn't hold because of the color of their skin, because of what's between their legs, or because they claim they can be a man when they're a woman, or vice versa. It's not something that we should be doing. This article says, just like Obama, Harris has no ancestral connection to American slaves. However, unlike Obama, Harris has no ties to the black community by marriage either. She's married to a white lawyer, Douglas Emhoff. He's an entertainment lawyer who, according to his firm's website, quote, represents large domestic and international corporations and some of today's highest profile individuals and influencers in complex business, real estate, and intellectual property litigation disputes, close quote. The reason why the left likes or Biden does, and he keeps her on the ticket, is simply because she's black and female. They need to be able to win the South Carolina primary. She's very popular in South Carolina amongst the women, so that's why she's on the ticket. It also says here, with rioters plundering every central business district from Manhattan to Manhattan Island to Manhattan, Kansas, it's not a great idea to remind everyone that Kamala Harris put people in prison for breaking the law, but there is a way. They're talking about ways to sharpen it. Anyway, so she did this, but remember, she was willing to set up a fund or to help contribute to a fund or help raise money for a fund that bailed out Black Lives Matter rioters, Antifa rioters. It also says here, Americans like cops when they're stopping looters and murderers. They don't like shady or politically motivated ones, as she was, as in the AG of California. Harris used every shady totalitarian tool in the book to pursue the left's political agenda. She led the push to prosecute ExxonMobil, claiming that the company's dissenting view on global warming wasn't simply a difference of opinion, but a form of securities fraud. Man, this lady is a totalitarian, so we do have to be concerned about her. She also led the prosecution of pro-life activist David Dilaudid. Remember when he was going around and getting those tapes of those Planned Parenthood clinics, exposing them for the frauds they were? They were claiming they were giving healthcare services to women, and it was all about abortion, had nothing to do with healthcare. She also wants to seize your guns. She's admitted it much on the debate stage. She said that as president, she would give Congress 100 days to pass strict gun control laws. She would simply enact those laws by decree. She said one of Harris's priorities, a mandatory buyback of semi-automatic assault weapons. All right. Even Biden at the time called that unconstitutional. Now he's trying to do it. She's a fake. She's a fraud. She's a phony. But she's also a product of affirmative action. She's also a product of perpetual victimhood. And this is why I don't want holidays like Juneteenth. All right, guys, listen, I got so much more that I want to talk about. I'm going to be on Officer Tatum tonight, so I'll deal with some of the latest breaking news. I'll be back tomorrow with a guest on the podcast, Josh Hammer. You guys are going to enjoy him. We'll be talking about the persecution of Jews in the United States, George Soros, as well as Trump stuff, I'm sure, DeSantis stuff. He does lots of work online, so I look forward to that interview with him, Josh Hammer. So make sure you tune in for that tomorrow. That's going to be a great show. Anyway, I appreciate you guys tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Do not forget to subscribe to the podcast. Por favor. We need to see more of you on YouTube. We need to see you on Rumble. Rate, review, and share. This really helps us move up the ladder. All right. Find us on all things social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Getter, True Social. We're on Facebook as well. So find us there. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh, Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. Subscribe there as well to the podcast. And until next time, guys, do not grow weary doing good. God bless.